In a dramatic twist of Arctic geopolitics, U.S. President Donald Trump's audacious March 2025 congressional proclamation, "We will annex Greenland to the United States one way or another," intended to assert dominance in the silent strategic contest for Arctic supremacy, was swiftly overshadowed by Canada's deft diplomatic and economic maneuver, which repositioned Ottawa as a central player in a high-stakes mineral race, leaving Washington reeling from an unforeseen setback. By March 2025, a $3 billion rare earth and gold mining venture, spearheaded by Canadian companies Greenland Resources Inc. and Amarok Minerals, in partnership with the governments of Denmark, Greenland, and the European Investment Bank, secured a transformative foothold in Greenland's resource-rich terrain, effectively outflanking Trump's aggressive rhetoric and strategic overtures. Trump's November 2024 re-election victory speech had outlined a series of ambitious, symbolically charged objectives from his first term, including constructing a fortified steel wall along the U.S.-Mexico border, brokering peace in the Russia-Ukraine conflict within a single day, and, most startlingly, incorporating Greenland into the United States through acquisition, control, or influence. Upon his return to the White House, the National Security Council promptly revived two long-shelved strategic documents: the Arctic Gap Identification Protocol, a Cold War-era framework from the Eisenhower administration designed to bolster U.S. presence in the Arctic, and the Thule Radar Belt Modernization Plan from the 1980s, which proposed either outright ownership or a long-term lease agreement with Denmark to enhance U.S. military infrastructure. Trump's March 4, 2025 address to Congress intensified this vision, emphasizing one way or another control, a stance that sent shockwaves through NATO capitals and Arctic stakeholders. Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, in classified defense briefings, underscored Greenland's strategic importance, arguing that its northern coastline creates a seismic shadow that obscures Russian ballistic submarine movements, rendering Alaska's radar systems partially ineffective and exposing a critical vulnerability in U.S. national security architecture. Open-source intelligence reports and geological surveys amplified U.S. interest, estimating Greenland's subsurface wealth at a staggering 38 billion tons of rare earth elements, alongside substantial deposits of graphite, zirconium, niobium, and approximately 17 billion barrels of Arctic oil, resources essential for advanced technologies, clean energy, and energy security in an increasingly resource-scarce world. Missouri Senator Josh Hawley emerged as a fervent advocate, framing the pursuit as an imperative for economic national security, warning, "If we don't secure these critical minerals, Beijing will exploit the vacuum to dominate global supply chains." Copenhagen's initial response was restrained but resolute. Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, fielding abrupt inquiries, reaffirmed Greenland belongs to the Greenlanders, while a March 12th joint statement from Nuuk's coalition government and the Danish monarchy categorically rejected any sovereignty negotiations, delivering a pointed rebuke to Washington by cautioning that coercive tactics could undermine the foundational principles of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, threatening the alliance's cohesion at a time of heightened global tensions. Trump's populist mantra, "We will make Greenland rich," resonated with segments of the American public, who questioned why the U.S., already maintaining a military presence at Thule Air Base, shouldn't assume greater control in exchange for economic benefits. However, Greenland's leadership, operating under autonomous status within the Kingdom of Denmark, had strategically aligned its development vision with Europe, leveraging the European Union's 2023 Critical Raw Materials Act, which mandates that at least 25% of rare earths consumed within the EU originate from allied sources adhering to rigorous environmental and human rights standards. Nuuk's Red-Green Parliamentary Coalition, navigating the delicate balance between Trump's pressure, Denmark's oversight, and domestic aspirations for economic independence, seized this opportunity to forge robust economic partnerships with Europe, prioritizing sustainable mining models that ensure equitable revenue sharing and compliance with global environmental benchmarks. This ambitious strategy, while bold on paper, required substantial capital investment, paving the way for Canadian firms to emerge as pivotal players in Greenland's mineral development. Greenland Resources Inc., a modest Ontario-based mining company specializing in molybdenum prospecting since the early 2010s, had faced challenges with low liquidity on Canada's commodity exchange due to its niche focus on metals. But its fortunes shifted as European steel manufacturers, driven by demand for high-strength alloys, increasingly sought molybdenum supplies. In the fall of 2024, the company secured a critical letter of intent from the European Investment Bank's Green Fund arm, further bolstered by collateral from Denmark's export credit agency, EIFO, culminating in the Greenland Cabinet's March 2025 approval of a 30-year Malmberg mining license, a development that blindsided Washington's annexation aspirations and positioned Canadian capital, backed by European financing, to extract and supply ore destined for Europe's high-value-added steel sector. Amaroq Minerals, a multi-metal exploration firm listed across Toronto, Reykjavik, and London, revitalized the Nalunak Gold Project, dormant since the early 2000s due to logistical challenges, harsh climate conditions, and insufficient funding. A rapid £45 million funding round, comprising £9 million from EIFO, £6 million from a subsidiary of Norway's government pension fund, and the remainder from private equity funds in the United Kingdom and the United States, underscored global investor confidence in Arctic mineral prospects, with London's financial district abuzz over speculative excitement fueled by the Arctic plus gold narrative. While U.S. policymakers pursued Greenland's resources with fervor, American financial capital quietly partnered with Amaroq's venture, revealing a striking disconnect between Washington's aggressive rhetoric and the pragmatic flow of global investment. The Toronto Press, capturing the strategic scope of Canada's Arctic ambitions, published a map under the headline, "Canada's Arctic Hexagon," envisioning a mega-development corridor spanning Baffin Island's iron ore mines in the north, Ellesmere Island's mobile rocket tracking stations, Devon Island's NASA CSA Joint Space Runway, and Greenland's burgeoning mineral projects. A network meticulously designed to counterbalance U.S. dominance while reinforcing Canada's role as a middle power adept at navigating complex geopolitical landscapes. Ottawa, acutely aware that Greenland's potential annexation by the U.S. could ignite disputes over Canada's Arctic islands and the strategically vital Northwest Passage, collaborated closely with Brussels to establish direct economic linkages with Nuuk, softening tensions and fostering a multilateral framework for Arctic development. NATO allies, however, displayed divergent stances. Norway steadfastly supported Denmark's position. Poland remained conspicuously silent to preserve its defense-centric relationship with the Trump administration, and France, under President Emmanuel Macron, mobilized development banks to fund infrastructure projects in Greenland, including a new airport, while deploying the nuclear-powered submarine Suffren to Baffin Bay under the pretext of an observation mission, signaling a robust French presence in the North Atlantic. Within this intricate geopolitical tapestry, a significant domino effect rippled through the American battery and defense industries, as molybdenum, though not a primary battery component, emerged as a critical material for high-strength steel bodies, heat transfer components, nuclear reactor pre-coatings, and hypersonic rocket nose tips, elevating its status from medium to high risk on Washington's critical metals list when Greenland's resources risked diversion to Europe. This shift exerted immense pressure on Pentagon suppliers, prompting Lockheed Martin to announce potential delays in its hypersonic test schedule from 2026 to 2030, and Raytheon to explore alternative molybdenum supplies from Australia and Chile, highlighting vulnerabilities in U.S. defense supply chains. The presence of Canadian companies in Greenland sparked bipartisan opposition within the U.S. Congress to Trump's bellicose rhetoric, with Alaskan Senator Lisa Murkowski warning that a hot conflict would devastate the Arctic's fragile environment, alienate European allies, and strain relations with Canada, while Democratic senators from Maine and Vermont argued that NATO tensions would bolster Canada-EU cooperation, advocating for a consensus-driven mining partnership to stabilize transatlantic relations. In response, the U.S. State Department proposed a comprehensive development initiative with Denmark and Greenland's local government, but Copenhagen swiftly rejected the package when it was explicitly tied to expanded base rights for the U.S. Navy, underscoring Denmark's commitment to Greenland's autonomy. Ottawa's security assessments cautioned that U.S. control over Greenland could reignite disputes over the Northwest Passage. To neutralize Trump's threats, Canada's most elegant move was to transform Greenland into a hub of multilateral economic interests through deep integration with European partners. The Canadian Ministry of Finance, in collaboration with the European Development Bank and Norway's Sovereign Wealth Fund, established a $3.1 billion Arctic Green Transition Fund, dedicated to financing infrastructure projects in Greenland, but deliberately excluding U.S. institutions from its governance, a pointed rebuff to Washington's ambitions. On the geological front, a frenetic race for radar-evading gold and associated minerals unfolded. With Amaroq's Nalunak site, initially perceived as a mid-tier gold mine, tensions along the new Copenhagen axis have intensified, with Copenhagen wary that an increased U.S. troop presence could galvanize Greenlandic independence movements, complicating Denmark's oversight. Investment fervor continues unabated, with Canadian Cedar Energy engaging European partners in negotiations for a floating LNG conversion plant off Disco Bay, capitalizing on uncertainties in U.S. LNG export permits to reroute gas to Eurasian markets, where Germany seeks to diversify away from U.S. and Russian gas by incorporating Canadian Arctic LNG. In the broader context, Trump's fixation on Greenland has spectacularly backfired, transforming the island into a vibrant Arctic development laboratory jointly managed by Canada and Europe, while weakening Washington's transatlantic alliance with the EU. Canada, skillfully wielding its middle power influence, balances Ontario's battery export restrictions with its Greenland mining ventures, maintaining equilibrium between competing U.S. and EU blocs. Although the White House keeps the option of forceful acquisition on the table, the escalating military, political, and economic costs of such a move grow exponentially with each new Canada-EU initiative. In conclusion, as geopolitical pressures mount, the Arctic transcends its image as a frozen sea, emerging as a dynamic chessboard where international law, trade routes, energy security, and indigenous autonomy converge, with Canada and Europe outmaneuvering Washington's heavy-handed approach through strategic partnerships, stringent indigeneity requirements, and equitable revenue-sharing models, rendering Greenland not an island for sale, but a 21st-century Pandora of critical minerals. What are your thoughts on this unfolding saga? Share your perspectives in the comments, subscribe to our channel, and activate notifications to stay informed. Thank you for engaging with our content.